Welcome to the LaunchFamily Podcast, where we bring expert-backed guidance to real parenting moments. I'm your host, Jessica Shelley, former public school teacher and mom of 7. And if you've ever felt like you're carrying too much emotionally, physically, mentally, and your body is starting to tap out, this episode is for you. Today's guest is Stacy Griffin, a former educator who left the classroom when her health forced a hard stop. Stacy lives with lupus, comes from a family with significant autoimmune history, and has lived through profound grief and trauma, including 8 miscarriages, multiple adoption placements that fell through, and years of navigating loss while still showing up for everyone else. But Stacy's story is not only about survival, it's truly about transformation. She calls the work she does now neuroalchemy, helping people take trauma, pain, and loss and build a life of grounded joy and peace on the other side. She supports families directly, often working with mom, dad, and child together. And she's also building programs for young adults aging out of foster care, helping them navigate trauma, identity, and adulting without being left to figure it out alone. Stacy, I am so grateful you are here today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I am very happy to be here.
Oh my goodness. Well, what an intro. And I appreciate you being so vulnerable for the podcast because ultimately our goal here is to really humanize this lived experience that we have. And so hearing stories like yours is truly inspirational. And I'm really excited to get into the work that you're doing now that is based off of those things that you've lived through. So taking us back, you started as a 7th grade English teacher. What has this kind of path looked like for you?
So I actually started as a college professor.
Okay,
And
there we go.
as a col as a college professor, I noticed that many of my students were coming into college completely unprepared. And I thought, maybe I need to take it down to a level where people really could be helped. So I looked at things and says 7th grade is where really your writing basis for high school and college begins. So that's how I ended up teaching 7th grade. And I loved it so much. It was wonderful, but it ended up being something that I couldn't continue doing.
Yeah, and you had mentioned in our initial conversation that your body kind of just like forced you to stop. Can you share a little bit more about what that moment was like and when you realized you couldn't kind of keep powering through it for it?
Yeah. So I was the head of the English department. I was the writing coordinator for the kids that were in the writing club. And I, of course, was teaching a full load of 7th grade classes. And despite loving it all, my body was shutting down. So my podcast that I do is called Autoimmune Adventures. And it's because me and my family have a significant autoimmune disorder concern in our hereditary situation. So what happened was I'd recently been diagnosed with lupus and I was putting in 60-hour weeks, which you just shouldn't do generally. But then to do it with lupus is really, really not in my best interest. And it was causing blood pressure problems, heart palpitation, dizzy spells, all kinds of crazy things. So I had a hard stop because my doctor basically sat me down and said, you can live for 2 more years the way that you are right now, or you can live for 30 more years, but you can't do it as a teacher. So that was my hard stop. That was my reality check, that what I was doing, as much as I loved it, as much as my servant heart was happy, it was not literally good for my heart. It was causing me problems that were endangering my well-being.
Yeah, I feel like that's like very common too for teachers. Like that was my first career was an educator as well. And it's so easy to, oh, I've got to get this one more thing done, or I've got these papers to grade, or a parent that I've been meaning to call for the last 3 weeks, right? So it does just add up very quickly. How did that kind of moment in your health change your relationship with work, identity, and what success meant to you?
Well, initially, what it did for me was after the reality of the physicality of it, what ended up happening was that I started to spiral emotionally. because I thought, well, what am I supposed to do? This is my life. This is who I am. And I think teachers often identify themselves as teachers. I think most people identify who they are by what they do. So your job is your identity. And when that is suddenly taken from you, you have to reassess, okay, who am I really? What really matters? And what do I need to do with my life now? So I looked at what really mattered to me and I realized that as a teacher, I had often been frustrated with some of the expectations that were placed on me, either by administration or by the state or whatever the case might be. And I started to think about, what do I really love about when it comes to teaching? What is the key to why I'm even here? And I realized it was the kids that needed that extra help, that needed that boost, whether it was because they had ADHD or autism or they were struggling at home. And because I've been a foster parent for so many years, I had a lot of kids that were just struggling to, have enough food on the table, have a roof over their head, those kind of things. So I began to think, well, maybe I can volunteer. Maybe I can do some other stuff. And then I came across a program that was going to allow me to coach, and not just coach, but coach teens and their parents. And then from that, I also started coaching adults. So coaching came to me as a natural side effect of not being able to be in the classroom and
Mm.
still wanting to do something similar.
Yeah, yeah. And you've been so incredibly open about your life experiences. How does that all play out in the way that you coach or like your approach that you take with kids and families?
Well, I've experienced a lot of pain and sorrow in my life. I think that's true for most people, but I've had a really big share of it. And I've learned in life that you can either take those experiences and you can turn them to your good, or you can wallow in them and become overtaken by the pain and sorrow and loss. So, what I teach people to do in my coaching is to take those losses and refine them. And that's where neuroalchemy comes from. Alchemy is taking something that is not beautiful and not useful and turning it into something beautiful. If I were to quote from a biblical source, it would be beauty for ashes. That is what neuroalchemy is. So, to be able to look at things and say, this is hard, but what am I learning from it? How can I regulate my nervous system in the midst of this stress and pain? How can I be okay with who I am? Because who I am innately never changes. What I want to accomplish with my soul, my heart, my mind, that never changes. But how I choose to move forward, how I choose to make that occur in the world around me sometimes has to change when our circumstances do. So, what I learned was that if I wanted to alchemize, if I wanted to take the ugliness that I was experiencing and turn it into something beautiful, it had to be a conscious choice. It had
Mm.
to be something that I decided. And that's why nervous system regulation became so important for me, because I began to understand a well regulated nervous system allows you to cope with a lot more and have the brain power to actually deal with things when they come your way, even the unexpected things. So that was kind of where it came from. I started a program with a woman named Kohila Sivas that is called the Holistic Neurogrowth Learning Success Coaching Program. And from that, I also developed my coaching program that I do called Ash Rise and Alchemy. So that's kind of where all that came from.
Incredible. Oh my gosh. And, with your coaching, I want to talk about that a little bit too. Like, how do you typically work with families? Like, who do you work with and how do you typically work with them? Um,
Okay.
and what do you typically work with them on or about or in regard to?
Okay, so the way that it usually works is usually a parent is coming to me because their child is struggling, whether it's academically or they're acting out or they're having anxiety or fear or something along those lines. So they're coming to me because maybe they want help with English, but honestly, most of the people I work with are coming to me for the nervous system regulation. So what happens is a parent will come to me and I will sit down with them. They will walk me through the struggles that their child is having. I will listen and then I will say, okay, so this is, let's just say the kid's name is Thomas. This is Thomas. He's 14. He's struggling with acting out and having attitude at home. What we need to address is why that attitude is occurring. So then we have a conversation, me and the parents. Then we set up time where I work with that child to learn how to regulate their nervous system, learn how to overcome that desire to be recalcitrant and out of control. And then I also work with the parents because a parent has to be regulated in order for their child to remain regulated. No one ever talks about that, but the honest truth is dysregulated parents can't regulate their kids. You can't teach what you aren't actually living. So I spend a lot of time talking with parents as well. And that's how that works. I think a lot of times with coaching, parents throw kids at a coach or a tutor and expect that to solve the problem. And the truth of the matter is, if the child does not feel safe in their own body and in their own mind, then it is very hard for them to learn anything. And then if you've got a parent who's dysregulated, their child isn't ever going to get regulated in a way where that safety happens. So the connection between the parent and the child is very important, and that's where I work. That's the space I fit in, is being a bridge for them until they can make those connections themselves. I like to say that my happiest day is when they fire me. When I have done my job and
Yeah.
they are communicating without me being there to help. Like, I can exit stage left and say, "Good luck. I'm so happy for you." So I'm a bridge. That's basically what it is as far as working with teens and parents. And I also work with younger kids. It's just that teens are usually the ones that are acting out the most.
I was gonna say when you
So,
described 14-year-old, I'm like, "Oh, that sounds like kind of like a normal 14-year-old." They might be
yes.
going through some stuff. Um, in your practice too, one of the big things that you had mentioned was that you believe most people can't heal alone, even if they're strong and capable. So what does it look like to have someone kind of hold your hand through that internal work, whether you're working with the parents to help them with their teen or, any sort of different lens or even your own healing journey? How has that approach kind of come out in your work as well?
Well, really, what it comes down to is that we are social creatures. Humans are meant to be with other humans. That's what makes us different from all the other animals in the world, is that association is how we build life, build meaning in the world. And so when we are struggling, when we are suffering, if we're doing that by ourselves, we don't have the sounding board that we need in order for us to heal. Healing takes getting the pain and the sorrow and the loss out in the open where it can not be as scary. It gets big and scary inside of us. If we can get it out in the open and have someone who is willing to walk that path with us, then it becomes easier. And I certainly had people who did that for me. And that's why I felt that it was so important to do that in my own practice, because I think it's important for people to not feel alone. There's a lot that the world dishes out on us. There are a lot of struggles that we are given to deal with, and parents get a double dose because it's not just their own personal things that are going on, it's everything that's going on with their kids. And so it's tricky to navigate life alone. And a lot of people have to. A lot of people are being single parents. A lot of people maybe are in a marriage where it's not equally yoked and not everyone is able to help the same way. There's so many things, so much nuance that's there, and that's why I think it's important. Healing alone is almost impossible. Anyone will tell you that we're social and we can't. That's not how we're built. That's not how we're built. So that's the easy answer.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think alongside that, like my teacher brain and my mom brain is also going at the same time. And I want to talk about another kind of like core piece, which is like the relationship between the parents and the schools or the parents and the teacher. Because as you mentioned with your philosophy is that you work with the parents and the child, right? And like in partnership. And I think that that's something that I experienced as an educator, which was like, I'm trying to get the parent to come in so we can like be partnered, help me understand what's happening at home so I can maybe help at school and I can tell you what's working at school so it can maybe work at home. So for parents that are listening in, what are some of the most helpful ways to collaborate with teachers without feeling like, they're being labeled as difficult or like overbearing or something, especially with like the teenagers who are maybe a little more independent or don't want their parents involved. But yeah, any advice there for those parents?
Yeah, my advice is this. At the end of the day, you are the parent. I'm sorry, but that's just how it is. So that means you need to be the parent. Um, as a teacher, I wouldn't say that I was never bothered by parents who wouldn't like helicopter parents. Occasionally, it was hard. But at the end of the day, I remembered that it was their right. It is your right as a parent to care about your child and want their well being. And it is actually very good for the teacher to have a parent that wants to be involved because, as you said, then we actually know how to help their kid. It's hard to help a child when we're basing it off of how they act in a socialized environment in a school classroom. We have no idea how they act at home. We have no idea how they act with you as their parent. And as a teacher, it's important for us to know that. It's part of the reason why I love what I do because now, as a teacher, I could call parents and say, okay, I need to know what he's doing.
Mhm.
Now, as a coach, I can say, okay, so when this happens, when you give him this rule that he needs to uphold, how does he act? Does she shut down when you say this to her? When we offer up as parents, when we offer up information to teachers, that's helpful to them. It's not us being busybodies. It's not us sticking our nose where it doesn't belong. As parents, we are allowed to do that. That's part of our job. That's part of who we are. So I would say probably the most important thing is to just remember that teachers have a heavy load on them and that the best way to help them and our children is to be open in communication with the teacher and let them know, hey, this is what's going on. This is why this is happening, or whatever the case may be. So just open communication is, I think, probably the most important thing I would say.
Yeah, and that community aspect that you brought in about like the healing, I was like, man, that makes a lot of sense too when you're trying to make progress with, the child and, they're at school for so long, they might in the secondary level, they're only in your class for maybe what, an hour or 90 minutes or something. So it really is about that community of kind of coming around your child and your family and how you can kind of move forward in the next step. You brought up a really good point as well about like the social media and like, how in general, we have a lot on our plate all the time right now. And we're trying to figure that out as a parent, but also we're trying to figure out that with our children. So for a parent who's in the thick of it right now, maybe they're feeling overwhelmed, dysregulated, exhausted. What's one practice that you'd recommend to start rebuilding from the inside that they could do for themselves?
Okay. So the most important thing is to regulate your vagus nerve. And the easiest way to do that is to hum. And I know that sounds crazy, but honestly, 2 minutes of humming helps everything in your body calm down. It gets you out of that animal brain in the back where you have fight or flight, and it brings you back to your prefrontal cortex where you think. So, if you're struggling, if you're having a hard time, if you're stressed and you just want to scream, mommy needs a minute. Mommy needs a minute. I'm going to go in the bathroom and you're going to hum. Now, I know it's weird, but as deep as you can, as loud as you can for about a minute or two. What that does is it regulates the vagus nerve, which is the main nerve that controls your entire nervous system. And by doing that, it allows you to oxygenate your brain so you can think. It's simple. It's really simple. Everyone will tell you to breathe. And yes, breathing is good. The whole box breathing, breathe in for 4, hold for 4, let go for 4, hold for 4. That is beautiful. And it does a lot of great things for oxygenating your body and getting it to calm down a little. But when you are in fight or flight, you need something fast. And I would say that that's probably the fastest thing. Will it make you feel silly? Probably. Does it work? Yes, it does. It may make you feel silly, but it always works.
I can just envision too, like on the drive home or like going to pick up your kids. It's for like aftercare or something. Like my kids are all young, so I'm not quite in the teenage, realm yet. But I'm like, man, I could just hum on the way home from work or whatever's going on. It's like, okay, I'm gonna like regulate before I go get the kids from, their daycare provider. So I love that strategy because it is so like so simple, right? And then when you practice it, then maybe it'll just become more innate over time. What are a few like micro shifts that parents can make that change the emotional temperature of the homes? If the parent is the, you know, thermometer holder, what can they do to then help their kiddos that are also living there with them?
I think probably the most important thing that any parent can do is before getting angry, get curious. Don't get angry, get curious. Anger doesn't solve anything at all, ever. And this is coming from someone who has a short fuse. So it's easy to get angry. It doesn't take any effort to get angry. It does take a minute to take a deep breath in and get curious. Whew, he just threw an entire potted plant all over my front room floor. What was that about? Right? But that doesn't solve anything. But if you go in and say, hey, what's going on? Why did you do that? I'm trying to understand why you got so upset that you did that. Well, my best friend told me that I'm ugly. Oh, well, I didn't know that. What? Why didn't you tell me that that happened at school today? Well, you didn't ask. When I came in, you were busy on your phone and you didn't ask me how my day went. And I didn't have a chance to tell you, Mom. Oh, oh. And so you acted out because their little nervous system isn't regulated. So you might see that with an elementary school kid. With a teenager, you might hear, no, I don't want to talk to you as they slam the door. Or any number of other things. Curiosity goes a long way. Kids love when you want to hear what they have to say. They love it. And so even if your teenager is being a little bit, okay, give them a minute, let their hormones settle, let them calm down a little bit, and then get curious. Hey, I noticed you were having a hard time. What's going on? Because let's just be real. There is nothing in our house that is more important than our kids. Nothing that we own matters more than them. They are human beings who deserve to be loved and cared for. They are not perfect and they're not adults. We shouldn't treat them like they're adults. That is the biggest struggle that I think parents have, is that we want them to be smart and understand like us. But from a neurological standpoint, here's probably the most important thing I can tell you. A child does not have a fully developed prefrontal cortex until they're 25 years old. While they are with us, they are not fully baked. At 13, they are half-baked individual. Half of their brain isn't there yet. Literally isn't there yet. So we can't expect them to make those conscious decisions that we make innately as adults because they don't have the capacity and ability. And it's not, oh, you're just trying to coddle your child. No, I'm not trying to coddle my child. I am simply saying that they do not have the hardware. It's
Yeah.
not there yet. So That's why curiosity is so good. It stops them from panicking in that back hindbrain, and it brings them into what they do have in their prefrontal cortex, where they can say, well, this is what's going on, or this is why I'm feeling this way. And usually it's during moments like that that you get, I'm sorry that I tipped your pot over because you didn't come unglued. You didn't dysregulate, thus they can regulate. So curiosity is by far the number one most important thing you can have as a parent.
Yeah, we've heard that message, I feel like, across multiple different podcasts in different contexts, because it can help with so much too of like building that connection and that trust with your children. And so I'm so glad that you brought it up in this context as well, which and you rooted it in like the brain science and their development, which is like so helpful for us to realize. You know, for parents that are listening in, they're like, "Oh man, like I struggle with like, you know, flying off the handle or like I lose my cool, I need my breaths, I need to hum." But they might feel maybe a little bit of shame around that or feel like they're failing because their family doesn't always look calm or maybe they're going through some, traumatic things as a family right now. What do you want parents to hear about that current state that they might be in?
I want parents to hear that they're not expected to be perfect. Most of us who got to adulthood did not get here with perfect parenting being done for us. I came from probably the most idyllic childhood you can imagine, and my parents still didn't always get it right. They, they'll be the first to tell you that they didn't know what they were doing half the time. Okay. We are blessed to live in a world where we have so much information, but the problem is that's a two-edged sword. We have so much information that now we feel guilt. We feel guilt for things that no one ever felt guilt for before. And that's not what we should be concentrating on. I think at the end of the day, what we need to remember is that everyone has trauma. Everyone has pain. Everyone experiences loss. Sometimes we are able to handle it with grace. Other times we come apart. That's being human. That's not being wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. What it is about after I have made a muck of things, can I go back and try and fix it? Can I go back and apologize? Am I willing to apologize to my children? Am I willing to admit that I'm not perfect? Am I willing to be vulnerable? Vulnerability goes a long way to building relationships. And that's true in any relationship, not just with your children. But there is something magical that happens when you are willing to be vulnerable and honest with your kids about what you're going through. And you don't tell them all the big, important parental adult things, but you can say things like, Mom's having a really hard time today. Someone I love died. I'm struggling. I'm sorry if I haven't been as nice. Or I'm sorry, I need to be alone. I need a moment alone. There is no shame in asking for what you need. You can't help people if you don't get what you need first. I think mothers especially get into this spiral of believing that they have to be everything to everyone, and you can't be everything to everyone. And you definitely can't do it if you're trying to do it while you're on a low battery that's barely operational. So,
Yeah.
when you're in trauma, the best thing that you can do is just make sure that every day you are setting aside a small amount of time that is yours, even if that means going in the bathroom and closing the door and humming. Because you you need to be okay. And I mean, I say that with a laugh, but I'm not even kidding really, because seriously, it's amazing what happens when you can get your nervous system calmed down a little bit, because then you can think, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. It's hard. It's ugly. We don't have enough money to pay the bills this month. We don't have enough. I don't have enough energy to do what I need to today. I'm not even sure that I can get done what I need to. My son needs me to help him with algebra, and I honestly don't even know how to do it. There's a million things that parents have to contend with every single day. Perfection isn't what we're looking for here, ladies and gentlemen. It's an impossibility. So don't try to be perfect. Just try to do the best you can in any given moment. And I can promise you that your kids will remember the good times, not the rough times, not the ugly times. They will remember the good times. I am an example of that. And I know thousands of people that will say the same. So deep breath in, mom. Deep breath in, dad. You're going to be fine. Just remember that perfection is not necessary for this job. Just love and a willingness to try.
Oh, love and a willingness to try. That sounds like the perfect parent, right? Is like we gotta love our kids and we gotta be willing to try and work through things. Posture of curiosity, I think, was another thing that really stood out, and the discussion that we've had today. So, Stacy, I just want to thank you so much for your honesty and for the way that you speak about hard things with such clarity and also hope. You're living proof that pain doesn't get the final word and that rebuilding is possible even when life has been relentless. To our listeners, if your body, your mind, or your heart is telling you something needs to change, please don't wait until it breaks. You're allowed to ask for help. You're allowed to heal, and your family benefits when you do. We'll be sure to connect or link all of the ways to connect with Stacy in the show notes so you can learn more about her work with families, explore her programs. We didn't quite get to talking about her upcoming program for foster children. So be sure to connect there as well. And remember that you don't have to do this alone. Until next time, you're not alone, and we're here with you every step of the way.